Next argument. Jeremiah 4, verse 23, and Genesis 1:2 both use the phrase without form and void. This is not conclusive evidence that they are referring to the same thing. The question one may ask as to the problem is answered in the context of which the words apply. Jeremiah chapter 4 is future. It is a futuristic prophecy of judgment that is coming. It is not a look back. It is a futuristic prophecy. Jeremiah 4, 23 through 31 and Genesis 1:2 both refer to an earth that is without form and void. Gap theorists love to point to Jeremiah 4, 23 through 31 to try to prove that there was a creation before Genesis 1:2 that God had to destroy. Let's look at Jeremiah 4, 23 through 31. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds in the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and by his fierce anger. I don't understand where they get the argument that this is not a future event. Okay? This is clearly judgment. All right? They say, oh, well, there was no man, so it had to be a pre-Adamic. No, it didn't. We're talking about a future event. We're talking about God's judgment. Okay? So, a conclusion could be made based solely on these premises that this was a judgment on a pre-existent earth, possibly, but when you put a closer examination on it, and the comparison of Scripture with Scripture, you find this is not the case. Jeremiah 4, 14 through 19. Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness, that thou mayest be saved. How long shall thy vain thoughts lodge within thee? For a voice declareth from Dan, and publisheth affliction from Mount Ephraim. Make ye mention of the nations. Behold, publish against Jerusalem, that watchers come from a far country, and give out their voice against the cities of Judah. As keepers of a field are they against her round about, because she hath been rebellious against me, saith the Lord. Thy way and thy doings have procured these things unto thee. This is thy wickedness, because it is bitter, because it reacheth into thine heart. My bowels, I am pained at my very heart. My heart maketh a noise in me. I cannot hold my peace, because thou hast heard. These are the verses preceding the passage that they say refers to a first creation that was destroyed. It's a prophetic warning regarding future tribulation. This is further amplified by the references to trumpets in verses 20 and 21, which again refers to 1 Corinthians 15:52 and 1 Thessalonians 4:6. Destruction, verse 20, a reference to 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The heavens were black, verse 28. Well, you can find that in Matthew 24:29. Then there's horsemen, verse 29. You find that in Revelation 9:16. And the passage continues on in verse 27 to be in the context of future tribulation and judgment. It has nothing to do with anything pre-Adamic. There is no gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. The context of the chapter as a whole is enough evidence to conclude that Jeremiah 4:23 through 26 refers to a future event. Anyway. Also, let me go ahead and point out, if you read a lot of prophecy, you'll find out that a lot of it is in past tense, because God is eternal, and he often speaks of future things in present and even past tense, so that is not a problem. As a matter of fact, if you look at Isaiah 53, 4 through 5, you can see this very clearly in this messianic prophecy. Jesus had not yet come. He was not due for a long, long time. And yet Isaiah 53, 4 through 5 uses past tense. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet did we esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Past tense, and it had not yet happened. So, let's also compare some with Revelation 6 and Jeremiah 4. Jeremiah 4:24 describes an earthquake. Revelation 6:12 describes an earthquake. Revelation 6:12 says, in this, continuing on in Revelation 6:12, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. This coincides with Jeremiah 4:23. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, in the heavens, and they had no light. Well, you have darkness in Revelation 6:12 and in Jeremiah 4:23. Okay? If the sun becomes black, it would mean there's no light, guys. The heaven departed, the mountains and the islands moving out of their places seems to agree with the phrase without form and void, because it was being destroyed. Revelation 6 verse 13 and Jeremiah 4:25 also match. Revelation 6:13, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth. Jeremiah 4:25, all the birds of the heavens were fled. Well, why were they fleeing? Why were they running away? Well, let's take a look, because the heavens were falling out of the earth. Okay? Angels are sometimes referred in the Bible to as stars and birds. You can see them as birds in Ecclesiastes 10:20 and Matthew 13:4 and 19. The phrase were fled does not mean they ran away. It simply means that they were fallen to the earth. Okay? Now Jeremiah 4:25 says, I beheld, and lo, there was no man. Why? Revelation 6:15 through 16 says, it's because they were in hiding. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens, and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Why was there no man? They were hiding. No problem. Finally, Jeremiah 4:26 and Revelation 6:17 are in agreement about the wrath of God. Jeremiah 4:26, I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down in the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. Revelation 6:17, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? The mention of cities is of no consequence. God destroys spiritual Sodom and Egypt in Revelation 11:8 through 13, and Mystery Babylon in Revelation 14:8 through 20. Cities were destroyed, or will be destroyed, in our timeline. The reference to the fruitful place, which was a wilderness, is Babylon, Revelation 18:10. Let's also look at Revelation 18, verses 16 through 19. Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. That's Babylon.